In today's episode, I'm suspended? You're fired. Mom's best friend. You want a starfish? Okay. So let's get started. I'm suspended? You're fired. Several years ago, I used to work at a shipping warehouse. I was 19 when this story took place, and I had been there for about a year. The way this place operated was that they would have about 100 to 200 employees at any given time, with shifts changing out every 4 hours to cycle through everyone. It wasn't the best company to work for, but I was still new to the workforce at the time, and I was just happy to be getting a paycheck so I could buy things. I came in one day, and one of the site leads had gone into labor, so she was on maternity leave for a while. Apparently this wasn't expected to happen so soon because the other leads were all scrambling to get her shift covered. They covered the shift when they could but eventually hired a temp manager, who we'll call Jeff for the sake of the story. It became obvious very early on that this guy had some sort of complex, because as soon as he was introduced he ran the employees there like a tyrant. Imagine the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket, but even meaner, and with no idea what he was doing. Naturally, I had the misfortune to work the shift he was in charge of. We all noticed that he was just assigning people to different stations almost at random, regardless if they were trained to work it or not, but I don't think anyone said anything because they were too afraid or something. I still have no idea why, but for some reason the other site leads and HR left him totally off the leash and unsupervised as soon as they introduced him to us. Before this guy had started, I had been speaking with HR and my team supervisor about applying to be one of the site's delivery drivers, and they directed me to the dispatch desk to apply. Well, one day I did that on my break and Jeff came up to me screaming about how I was wasting his time, and that he didn't pay me to just sit there and chat with people. I told him that I'd already gotten the okay from HR, and they actually directed me to have this discussion, plus I was on my break so I wasn't even on the clock. This guy was not having it. He said that I could either do what he told me to do or he would write me up. Again, I tried to explain that I was on my scheduled break, but he just cut me off. He said I was suspended until further notice, which wasn't even something the company did. I asked if I could finish applying for the position as the delivery driver, and he lost his shit. He kept saying for me to get out of his building, and that he had better never see me again. At first I was freaking out, thinking I had just been fired. I thought to myself, he can't do this to me. Then I saw my team supervisor approaching after hearing the yelling. He just stood there, and when Jeff was done, he smiled and nodded at me and it clicked. He actually can't do this to me. I had never gotten any write-ups before, and I was actually one of the top performers on my shift. This guy couldn't fire me without any write-ups or a proper HR investigation. I instantly calmed down, realizing that I wasn't the one who would end up being fired. I just shrugged, said okay, and went home, knowing the company didn't have any kind of suspension penalty and figuring the time would be taken out of my vacation pay or something. About 5 days later I got the call I was expecting from the warehouse's HR department, asking me to come back. Apparently my team's supervisor and several others from the shift had reported Jeff for mistreating the employees and going against the warehouse's safety guidelines, and he was fired. I grinned, realizing the position I was now in, and told them that I wanted to be paid at the overtime rate for the days I was forced to take off, and I didn't want any of it to affect my attendance, which they agreed to after a bit of grumbling. When I got back, Jeff was nowhere to be found, and the night shift site lead had taken over for the morning shift as well. I didn't get to be a delivery driver, but the paycheck for that week was almost double what I usually got, and I got a bonus at the end of that month for perfect attendance. I left the job a few months later due to a different, unrelated issue. Mom's best friend. My mom's best friend from college came for a visit every year or two, and since I had the only adult-size bed in the house, other than my parents' bed, Betty always stayed in my room. Usually her son, a year or two younger than me, and I camped out in the backyard, or we were allowed to sleep in the living room with full control of the TV. When I was 12, I had only recently discovered the concept of music radio. This was in the early 80s, and I was obsessed. It was an amazing era for music, and I had my favorite radio station, and my parents bought me a dial-controlled clock radio, which was a pain in the ass to tune in, so I always left it on one station, which played 80s top 40 pop rock. However, every time Betty stayed over, she changed the radio station, and it would take me forever to hit the sweet spot to get good reception for my radio station again, and she smoked like a chimney, and had no idea of the concept of smoking outdoors, so my room always stank for a while after she left. She was also a music snob and only listened to symphonic music, either classical composers or compositions written for ballet or NPR. I really hated, and still do, when people mess with my shit, and I complained, but Betty was the kind of person who didn't give a *T what kids think. Kids are there to do what adults say, and I should be grateful she deigned to use my room while she visited, and my annoyance was ignored. Finally, one day I learned she'd be coming for a visit. I briefly considered removing the radio, but instead, my devious young mind had another idea. I had recently discovered the joys of super glue, and had a small tube. So I superglued the knob to the front surface of the radio, so it wouldn't move. When I got my room back, my clock radio knob was just as I left it, and Betty's nerves were all over the place. She never came back for an overnight visit. Years later, as an adult, I moved to another major city and brought that radio with me. It was still stuck on that same frequency, and by the most amazing of luck, the station assigned AM 1350 also happened to play 80s top 40 pop rock. You want a starfish? Okay. I used to work at a well-known pet store a few years back, and was the person my coworkers came to for any type of aquatic/reptile/aviary/small animal advice. This isn't really a big event like a lot of the stories I read on here, but this always makes me laugh to think about, so I figured I would share it. I'm in the back room cleaning out the cricket bins when one of the newer employees came up to me looking really frustrated. After talking about it, I learned there was a woman on the floor who wanted to purchase our chocolate chip starfish, but apparently knew nothing of salt water tanks, and was being unreasonable, and had gone through 2 other associates already. I hated doing crickets, so I gladly traded handling the Karen over that and made my way to the floor. Karen, finally someone else who might actually help me. I want this one here. I looked in her cart and noticed a small box of aquarium salt and a 5-gallon tank. Me, sorry you were having trouble, ma'am. Since I'm just walking into the situation, though, we have a few questions we like to ask people before selling them live animals, so I'll just run through those with you quick so we can get you on your way. Karen, over-exaggerated, fine, whatever, hurry up. Me, perfect. What size is the salt water aquarium setup you have at home, and what fish do you currently have in it? Karen, like I was telling the other kids, I don't have one already, can't you people listen? I have this one in my cart and the salt right here. I'll set it up when I get home. I want this starfish for my kids. That was literally all she had in her cart, ignoring the fact that she was trying to cram the ocean into 5 gallons. She had no filters, heaters, substrate, hides, nothing. Me, got it. So ma'am, the issue is you need to have your aquarium set up ahead of time before you purchase fish, and that takes time. Also, a tank that size is not acceptable for any type of salt water setup, so if you'll just follow me I can show you what sizes you'll need. She follows me to the tanks and I point out a 55-gallon tank. Karen, are you kidding me? Did you see the size of the starfish? No. I want this 5-gallon. Me, well, unfortunately that is not an option. You'll also need more than just a tank and some salt. Karen, fine, what do I need to get out of here? Here's where the malicious compliance kicks in. I grabbed another cart and started grabbing all the basics you need to start a salt water tank, which for those of you who don't know, that is everything but cheap. She was following me around and kept trying to yell at me, but anytime she would say something I'd interject with a "Oh, this tubing is on sale. Good for you." Or "Oh, your children will love this substrate's color," and she would just get redder and redder in the face. About halfway through me getting the things she needed, totaling so far at $500, she yelled at me for being incompetent and abusing animals by not selling them to loving homes and stormed off. I put everything back with a huge grin on my face and called our sister locations to warn them about a potential Karen heading their way. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.